Now that you've decreased on each side for an additional 10 rows, it's time to measure our work. The total length of your work thus far should be 6 inches. This is the standard size for this pattern, but you have measured yourself and checked your gauge, so you can make your pattern as big or as small as you need to make it custom fit to your own specifications. Now, we will continue to decrease on each side for an additional 2 inches for the center part of the panty. It should look like this. Now it's time to learn how to increase a stitch. Stick your needle from front to back into your first stitch. Wrap your yarn around just like you're knitting and pull the stitch through. But instead of keeping the stitch onto your working needle, you are going to put it back on the existing needle. You have now made a stitch. That is called an increase. Now you're just going to knit into that stitch and continue knitting across until you get to the center stitch. Then we're going to learn something fancy. Now that we're at the center stitch, we are going to do what's called a yarn over. Pull your yarn to the front and then knit from front to back into the next stitch, wrapping your yarn around just like a regular knit stitch, pulling it back through and off the needle. Knit your next stitch. Then again, pull your yarn to the front, and with your yarn in the front, knit the next stitch. Then knit the rest of the stitches all the way across the row. Turn your work over, and we're going to make a stitch on the other side. Stick your needle from back to front and purl the first stitch. Take that stitch and add it to your needle. You've just made a stitch. Now purl that stitch and keep purling all the way across. Now when you turn your work over and inspect what you've done, you will notice that there are 2 tiny little holes in your pattern. That is what's called a yarn over. Yarn overs are generally mistakes, but in this case we're using them to create a lace pattern that will decorate the front of our panty. Continue increasing on each side and creating yarn overs until you have a total of 3 yarn overs. It should look like this. Continue this pattern until you have a total of 4 rows of yarn overs. Something that's important to note is that yarn overs are considered an increase because they create an additional stitch on the needle. So in order to keep our pattern the correct size, at some point we're going to have to decrease, and this is that point. This row we will be adding 2 additional yarn over stitches at the beginning and the end of each row, and we will be decreasing in the middle while continuing our yarn over pattern. So knit 2 stitches, pull your yarn forward, knit the next stitch, pull your yarn forward again, knit across to your first middle yarn over. These are your 2 yarn over stitches, so you're going to knit both of your yarn over stitches. And you're going to decrease on the right side by pulling the first yarn over stitch over the second. Now pull your yarn forward, knit that middle stitch, pull your yarn forward again, and on the left side you will decrease by knitting the next 2 yarn over stitches together, then pull your yarn forward again, knit across until you have 3 stitches on the needle. And before that 3rd stitch, you're going to make a yarn over. After that 3rd stitch, you make a yarn over, and then you turn your pattern over and you purl all the way across. Continue with this pattern until you have 8 yarn over rows in the middle and 3 yarn over rows on each side. It should look like this.